Formula One fans, today we're going to talk about Lewis Hamilton and George Russell and how you guys think that relationship at Mercedes is going to really pan out for the 2022 season. Now, for the record, I feel like I have to say this because it seems like nobody can really give an opinion about Lewis Hamilton if they're not hating him without being criticized. I like Lewis like I like any other driver on the grid. Now, do some of the things he does annoy me like some other drivers? Sure. I think that's a given. There are definitely some characteristics of Lewis's driving personality that can be a little bit annoying since he's so used to winning. But I still like Lewis. I still think he's a great inspiration for the youth. That's very clear and abundant. You just see kids in karting. A lot of them still look up to Lewis. So I like him on that regards. But when we talk about him and George Russell and how that partnership is going to work, what I don't want a Lewis and Nico, V2. It wasn't really enjoyable racing to me because I like to see two teammates on the same team actually get along and compete against other drivers on other teams. I don't want to see two teammates going against one another. I don't like that dynamic. Now, I don't think that'll really be the case between George and Lewis. I think it's pretty clear George respects Lewis a lot. I think Lewis also does like George Russell to an extent. So something that people have to keep in mind when it comes to George Russell is that George is still young. He knows he's the future of Mercedes. He knows Lewis is not going to be there for a long time. I'd be surprised if Lewis stays for another 3 seasons. And that George is just going to simply bide his time. George is a team player. I think certain races, team orders may play a factor. Now, do we want that? No. Of course, the fastest driver should be given priority. But if Lewis is still staying in the sport and if he's still competitive, I don't think George is going to have much of an issue, obeying team orders, knowing that he's the future of that team and eventually it'll be his time and his spot to then have maybe the secondary driver, whomever George's teammate will be in the future, take team orders. So I think they should work well together. Again, I hope there's really no major friction between the two drivers. I think they're both extremely talented, and I just don't want to see a Lewis and Nico version 2 happen again. I just don't think it's very good racing, and I don't think it's a good team dynamic for any team to have two drivers not exactly on the same page. So you guys let me know if you think George and Lewis are going to get along well. And do you think George is going to be fast enough to be outpacing Lewis in qualifying? I think that's really the main thing, because if George is just that much faster on track than Lewis, then that will put things into a different perspective of, okay, even though Lewis has obviously been the forefront of this team for, quite a while now, do we give priority to George if he is, just a much faster driver? Do I expect George to be that much better than Lewis in his first year? Maybe not. I would say maybe not in the first half of the season, perhaps. But I think as the year in the 2022 season goes on, I think George is going to continue to develop. He's going to continue to get faster and better. And that is when I think he'll definitely be at that point. But I don't know. George is such a great talent. He could end up being much faster than what some of us are expecting at the beginning of the season. And again, that could make things a little bit tricky for Mercedes and what they decide to do when it comes to team orders and all of that, because they clearly never really want to step on Lewis's feet when it comes to decisions and when it comes to obviously other drivers. But I genuinely do think Lewis wants to work with George. I do think he wants to help George develop, and I think they should have a pretty solid relationship. I hope. Like I said, I don't expect it to be a Nico and Lewis situation, and I don't think most of us should not want that. I don't know why anybody would really want that to happen again. So I sincerely do hope that they get along well as teammates, and I hope they're pushing each other. I hope George pushes Lewis to still be as good as he can before he retires, and I hope that obviously Lewis can give George his insight and really help mold George into being a multiple world champion in Formula One, alongside the likes of obviously Max Verstappen, who is still going to be as great as he can be in that Red Bull. And then, it would be great to see Charles Leclerc up there in the mix in the Ferrari, but Ferrari's a whole nother story. So we'll see. But at the end of the day, I don't expect there to be too much friction between George and Lewis. They're both very, I would say as far as their personalities are concerned, they both hold a certain level of integrity for the most part. Obviously, like I said, Lewis has some antics that, can obviously annoy or anger fans. But for the most part, Lewis still seems to hold himself to a certain level of dignity and accountability, and George obviously, the same. So I don't see them butting heads too much. I don't see them having too many issues or too much friction. If anything, I see fans complaining if they feel like George is being too passive with Lewis when it comes to team orders. I'm sure some fans will be mad if George does get team orders when he's clearly the faster driver. And, fans will be like, well, George is faster. Why does he have to, slow down for Lewis, and, so on and so forth. I could definitely see that becoming an issue, but I don't think it'll be such a big deal that Mercedes as a team will suffer for it. And again, George knows he's the future of that team. I don't see him getting super antsy or super impatient. He's shown he has patience. He has been at Williams for a couple of years. He has really been in the mud with Williams when it comes to that car, and how he's helped make them a much better team going into the 2022 season. So George has clearly demonstrated patience, and I don't see him having any issues with maybe, still taking time to develop and obviously be the second driver for Mercedes, but a much faster second driver than Valtteri Bottas. I don't think we're going to have an issue of, George not being fast at certain tracks like Valtteri is. That inconsistency, I don't think we're going to see from George. He'll always be finishing in the points, and I think, if anything, he'll be challenging Max as well. So the Red Bulls, I think, are going to have a harder 2022 season than this year. So I think without a shadow of a doubt, unless that Red Bull, improves so much that it's faster than the Mercedes, I don't see Red Bull having as much of an easier chance to win the Constructors in 2022, despite regulation changes, compared to Mercedes with George Russell, teaming alongside Lewis. I think it's going to be much harder, and that's no shade to Red Bull. It's no shade to Max. It's no shade to Sergio. But if you were to line the drivers up, Lewis and Max are pretty much on the same level currently. We have to wait to see how this 2021 season pans out to see who is actually the better of the drivers for the championship. And then I think it's pretty clear that George Russell, as far as long-term talent is concerned, is better than Chico. And I love Chico, but I think George is clearly the better driver once he gets in better machinery. So I think the edge to Mercedes will be even stronger for the Constructors in 2022. But the Drivers' Championship is going to be completely up in the air, and that's what I'm really looking forward to the most for the 2022 season. So with all that being said and done, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. We should take it from there. If you are new, make sure to subscribe for weekly Formula One discussion content here, and we'll take it from there. It's Racing Chemical signing out. Hope you all have a great and fantastic day. See ya, and goodbye.